Podcast. I'm Jeff Goodman. He's Rob Hummel, and we've got the guy. Honestly, I know Chris Holtmann, you don't want to hear this. You're dealing with a Purdue guy. I mean, this hasn't not been a good year for you and the Boilermakers, but we bring you onto a podcast, and you've got to look at Mr. Purdue. Kind of sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, and appreciate that.
I'm sure we're going to get great guests going forward with Jeff introing this like that. I'm sure people will love to come on here.
It's a good start. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. 0-2 against the Boilers this year, and blame that on the coach. That was I tell you, I like this Purdue team a lot. I think they're good. Give them credit. They got us twice. Hopefully we'll get another crack at them.
Yeah, that's 2 of your 4 losses, so that's not so bad, Chris. I think you would take that if I told you that at the beginning of the year, that you'd only have 4 losses at this point, and 2 of them would come to Purdue. You'd still probably sign on the dotted line there. All right, let's head back. Let's turn back the clock a little bit to 2008, I believe was the year when you were leaving Gardner-Webb as a head Division I coach to be an assistant. Go back to the assistant life at Butler University. There aren't many guys, Chris, that left D1 head coaching jobs to become an assistant again. There are a few, but not many. When I first heard that, I thought you were bananas. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? You can run your own program. Now, maybe there was a little bit more money involved at Butler. I don't know. I don't know what the pay scale was at Gardner-Webb back then, but
a little bit. There was a little bit more. Yeah, it was
a little bit more.
A bit of a pay bump.
So what was that like? And was your wife fully on board? Like, how hard was that to give up a D1 head job? There's only 300. There are probably only about 335 of those at the time.
Well, keep in mind, my wife is her family lived in Indiana at the time, still does. But, it was a really, really tough decision because we had just I'd been there 3 years and we just had our best year and had really got it turned around. We were moving it. We had won the most games in the history of the top school at Division I at the time, and had success and in terms of rebuilding it. And as you know, I think I've talked to you about this, Jeff. Brad Stevens and I talked after year 1 at Gardner-Webb about joining him. Yeah. And I'll never forget, they had just come off the national championship, second national title game run. And I never forget being in the parking lot of the athletic facility at Gardner-Webb and saying to Brad, I just can't do it at this moment. I made a commitment to at least move this thing in a positive direction. And that's hard to turn down a guy like Brad, as good as he is, and what I knew that could potentially do for my career. But fast forward a couple years, and I just did feel better about it. I had to make sure everything was lined up with the staff. The deal with those kind of moves, Jeff, is, and I'm sure both you and Robbie know this, is the first thing you think about is, okay, how will this impact my staff? It's the first thing you think about, because you can't uproot a bunch of families who've committed to work for you without having a plan in place for them.
Sure. So
once my AD agreed that they would stay on, that they would have a chance to be interviewed for the head coaching job, all that stuff lined up, I had a couple conversations and decided to do it. Now, I will tell you, I ask everybody, including Thad, whether I should do it or not. And I got mixed reviews, but mostly no's. Don't do it. Yeah, including Thad at the time was like, hey, I wouldn't do it. Hard to get jobs, would not leave. But, obviously it's worked out.
So, Coach, you go to Butler and you're an assistant for 1 year. Brandon Miller ends up stepping away. What was that summer like? Like, how soon did you know you were going to be the interim head coach? And what was it like kind of just being in that position?
Well, Barry Collier, as you both know, tremendous AD. He was up front the whole time, about where the process was, where it was headed. It's really an interesting, I think when I reflect back on that summer, it's all a bit of a blur. because there was so much going on, and you had a friend going through a really challenging time. So you were dealing with the emotions of that, and then at the same time trying to be there for your guys and for your players. But once we realized that, initially we were saying, okay, let's hope that let's get Brandon back. We'd only been there 1 year. Let's get this thing moving in a positive direction. We had a rough first year in the Big East, as everybody knows. But once we knew he wasn't come back, then it was a conversation with Barry regarding, okay, is it realistic for me to be considered for this job? And when I had that conversation with him over lunch, a couple weeks into the interim job, once we knew Brandon wasn't coming back, he was honest. He said, hey, we're going to evaluate you every day. We'll see what kind of progress you make.
So we know that Brad Stevens is pretty locked into Butler still. Like Jeff claims that he may retire one day and come back to Butler. That's Goodman just talking. Really?
Yeah, last year, like at 60 years old or something, he's had it, and he just says, you know what? Maybe Butler, somebody, steps down that year or something happens, and Brad's just like, you know what? If they can't find anybody else, I'll do it for a year.
Would not surprise me. Brad, Tracy, they're Butler. They love that place. Their kids love it. They follow it, as you know, to this day, and followed it while we were there. So, yeah, he loves it. He loves it. I know he loves where he's at. But way down in his career, it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't try to do that.
So when you were the head coach at Butler, do you have any good stories about Brad being like extremely passionate from Boston about any of your games or anything like that?
In terms of once he was with the Celtics.
Yeah.
I don't. All I know is he texted me after every game. Tracy and Brady, Brad's son, came to all of our Providence road games. He was one of those guys where Brad has a great way of obviously he's a coach, so he knows the pressure that coaches go through. And he knows, while I didn't follow Brad in a lot of ways, the time periods were close enough that I think he realizes that, there's still pressure following a guy like that, immense amount of pressure. So he was always incredibly gracious. And obviously it helped that we had a friendship dating back, 10 years. Brad, I worked on the staff at Taylor, and Brad worked at Butler. And that's, we used to go down and have lunch with him and watch practice. And that's really how our friendship began.
So 3 years in, you get the job, the full-time job, when I think a lot of people weren't sure you get it at Butler. 3 years in, 3 NCAA tournament appearances, and then Ohio State comes calling. Tell me about that interview. I know some things. I've heard some things about that interview. I want to know the truth of what happened with that interview with Gene Smith.
Well, I'll get back to that here in a minute if you let me. My wife last week, she keeps ticket stubs from a variety of games, and she kept a ticket stub from probably one of the more impactful games in our life, and that was the Battle for Atlantis, our game versus North Carolina. Up to that point, we had a few wins, and much, I knew Barry was observing everything we did in practice. He came to practice every day. So you got, potentially a future boss that's watching, everything you're doing. And Barry's a former coach. He let me know if he felt like I should be, potentially doing something different in practice. And it was, I didn't mind it at all. It was great, as a matter of fact, because he was a great resource. But I'll never forget, everything kind of changed after beating North Carolina in the Battle for Atlantis when they were top 5 in the country. And I got a long text from Barry at that point. And I told Lori, I said, our lives might change here. And that was kind of the first time where we realized, hey, potentially we could find a home at Butler. And she showed me that the other day, and she's going to have it framed, and it brought back a ton of memories. But yeah, fast forward a few years, obviously incredibly emotional time. the whirlwind hiring, I don't know if people fully understand how quickly hiring takes place. There is really no interview. There is really, I mean, there's multiple conversations, but it is, speed dating at the highest level. And, it just so happened that I had planned for some downtime during June. So I was playing in a golf benefit, and then I had a medical procedure that I had planned for 6 months. And it was just around the time that Thad decided, and Ohio State decided to part ways. So I got a call from a search firm. Literally when I was in the doctor's office in my gown. I think I know where you're leading me here, and I'm reluctant to talk about it, but I'll share it. If you can't laugh at yourself, right? Shame on you. So I was having a procedure for my hair. I was having the normal, you age, you get bald spots. So I was having a normal procedure that I had planned to have for about 6 months. My wife and a few others kept saying, hey, the camera from up top is showing a little bit right now. And they kept saying that. And then, a couple more months would pass and like, hey, you might want to figure out if there's an alternative right there.
Hey, Chris, I don't know if you could see, but my daughter comments on the bald spot that is ever increasing on my head. So I'm right behind you. You and I have talked about this.
I got a guy.
Yeah, I got to save a few more bucks, and then I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah, I got a guy. So it's typical hair transplant surgery. The unique thing was I'm in a gown. I get a call from the search firm. Hey, would you have interest? And I said to him, hey, listen, I'm at the doctor's office. Can we talk about this at another time? And he goes, yes, but I just need to know if you would entertain a call. I said, yes. I'll listen. And then I went to the hair transplant surgery, and I am completely medicated for basically the next 24 to 48 hours. I mean, I'm high as a kite. I'm not thinking straight. Yeah. And that kind of commences the beginning of the interview process, really. And it made it an interesting 48 hours for sure.
So you went to see Gene Smith and with the hat on, yes, and not looking so good.
Yeah. So Gene was great. Gene and Sheila, they're tremendous people. They, and obviously I didn't lead with, hey, I just had hair transplant surgery. I can't really come and see right now. But eventually, as we got more and more serious, and quite honestly, I had some, I just loved being where I was at. I loved being at Butler. So it was a very difficult decision. So at the beginning, honestly, I probably didn't show maybe the initiative that he was expecting or wanting for me to show. But eventually he was persistent, and eventually we did end up meeting. And I did at that point have to say to him, hey, listen, I'm not trying to be too casual here, but I'm going to have to throw a hat on because those that have went through a procedure like that, there's swelling that goes on. You don't look good. You don't look normal. That's why it's about it's really about a 4 to 6 week kind of recovery period. You're not supposed to be seen anywhere really for a few weeks. Well, they wanted a press conference to happen potentially in a couple days. And I said, listen, I'm going to come. I'm going to put on a hat. It was awkward. We met in a Holiday Inn Express in Dayton, and in kind of a hotel conference room. And he and Sheila were great. We spent, an hour and a half, 2 hours together. But it was an awkward first meeting given the circumstances of that surgery.
Coach, I think it's really cool that you just shared that. I think that a lot of people are like embarrassed, and they shouldn't be. Like it's like I've never understood with anything where if it's like if it would make you feel better or like that's what you want, who cares? Like I think it's really cool that you said that.
Yeah, no, you know what? Like I said, I've told Jeff this. I told Matter of fact, that when I've told, close friends, I've told close friends about it. And as you can expect, your close friends, I mean, they love to get on me about it. But it, hey, listen, it was an odd time. It's one of those things you reflect back and you say, man, that I'll never forget the timing and how all that worked. But obviously it was a major life decision for our family. And, I'll never forget calling Gene late one night and saying, listen, I'll be willing to talk. And he said, okay, I'll see you at basically 7 a.m. and driving early in the morning to Dayton and meeting him.
I'm going to do a better job, Chris. When I have it, I'm going to make damn well sure I don't have anything coming up. Like, I know you didn't plan it, but I'm going to make sure there's nothing. I'm going out of the country or something afterwards.
Yeah. Good call. You try not to have a press conference 3 days after you have it.
I will definitely not.
Try not to.
My retirement, Chris, nobody's going to come to a press conference, so don't worry. Not even Rob.
Yeah, I wouldn't come. Coach, you go from a basketball school in Butler, and yeah, they have football there, but is it Division II or Division III? I think some of my friends played there, but they weren't great football players.
It's basically what used to be
one double A. So you go from a basketball school, now you come to Ohio State, which is such a football school, and I mean you've been around Urban Meyer, you've been around. I'm blanking on his Ryan Day. Ryan Day is now the coach there. Do you have any good Urban Meyer stories? And do you guys still stay in touch at all?
Love Urban. Urban's been unbelievable to me. Really has. And as soon as I got there, I said, this is Urban Meyer. I've got to find a way to pick his brain as much as I can. It's Urban Meyer. I'm like I've got to figure out what has made him excel at such a high level. And you hear all these stories about how, the kind of worker he is and how maniacal he is. What I found him to be is incredibly gracious with his time, incredibly welcoming. I never forget our first year, we brought him in to speak to our staff. And so we're in a conference room and I said, hey, fellas, listen, we're going to have Urban Meyer come speak to us as a staff here. And, I'm expecting it to be really good. And they were all on board. And I'm telling you, I initially planned it for 45 minutes. We're 2 hours in and we could have went for 4 more hours. It was unbelievable. The stuff that he was sharing with our staff, challenging them in ways that I'm sure he's challenged his previous staffs. And, our guys were writing notes and we were laughing about it the other day because, he would say something and then he would ask them, if they were looking up at him, he would ask them, the answer. So a couple of them said, hey, I just wanted to keep writing notes so he wouldn't ask me any questions. I felt like I was being put on the spot.
Like a teacher, yeah.
Like fifth grade. You just didn't make eye contact.
I had a couple guys that said, yeah, I couldn't make eye contact with him. I couldn't do it. I was too scared. I couldn't do it. We were cracking up about it. As a matter of fact, we were just laughing about it a couple of weeks ago, but I got a staff that really wants to learn. So Urban's 2 hours in and giving us great stuff. And that kind of started our relationship there. And last year, even through the pandemic, we had breakfast multiple times. I'd pick anytime I called him. I'd say even during his stuff with Fox, I'd say, hey, can I ask you a few questions? I got something that I want to get your thoughts on. And he became really an unbelievable resource. And I've texted a little bit since he got the Jags job, but I've tried to leave him alone a little bit too.
Yeah, you're not going to hang out with him, go down there for a little bit during training camp and get out of the
I'd love to. Yeah, honestly, I'd love to. I'd love to get down there and spend some more time with him. But I also, he's got so many things going on. But I'd love to. I know that he'd be more than gracious. He's really been, what I would hope that I would be if I had someone if I had his pedigree, and there was maybe a younger coach who was hungry to learn, as I hope he thought I was. I would hope that I would be that gracious with my time. And Ryan's been phenomenal too. Ryan Day he's the real deal. What people think he is that. He is the real deal.
So when you first got there, I think you brought out Greg Oden was like I forget his title. What was his title?
He was at the time, Greg was
student manager, student.
Yes, he was a graduate manager.
Graduate manager. So you had Greg Oden. You also, I think, had Scooney Penn in a role.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Are those two playing like against the managers in game? Like, is this the greatest team ever put together on a staff? What was it like?
First of all, high level dudes, as you know. Scooney Penn is a high level guy, man. He's with Memphis now. He's with the Grizzlies now. And as you guys know, Greg's unbelievable. A lovable 7-footer, like big, lovable, like everybody loves Greg. Greg played with the managers every day after practice and before every game. So you saw all of these, sawed off, short managers. We had some size, but you saw all these managers and then you saw 7-foot Greg Oden out there, like just running dudes over. And occasionally he would, try to shoot threes, but when they needed him to score, like he would just, he would do what we know Greg Oden does. And, we were able to practice with Greg a few times. And because he was a graduate manager, he was allowed to do it. So we put him on the scout teams. Matter of fact, when we played, before we played Purdue, we put him on the scout team a couple of times because of Haas.
Yeah. And
we said, hey, we need someone to simulate Haas's physicality. So we said, hey, who better than Greg Oden? Let's put him on the scout team. Let's have him simulate all of, Purdue's runs so many actions to get their bigs touches. So we got the guy. Greg Oden is going to imitate Isaac Haas, and he's going to simulate that, even though, he's a few years removed from playing. We are probably, 2 or 3 minutes into our defending Purdue actions, and I had to call it off. I told Terry, I said, get Greg out. He's going to hurt our entire team. Get him out. Like bows were flying. Guys were falling out of bounds. He was posting them, throwing them into the basketball stand. I said, get him out. Like I need guys to play against Isaac Haas. So he gave us a great look, but I was afraid he was going to hurt our team.
I will say it was awesome doing your guys' games because after shoot around, the managers would play. They would play pickup and they'd grab Greg and they'd grab Scooney, and it's like,
yeah,
you think that it registers with them because they know those guys on a personal level, that you've got the number 1 pick in the NBA draft and the Big Ten Player of the Year from whatever year that was with Scooney playing against them. I'm not sure it did, but those they were beasts.
Well, if you know Scooney, they know because Scooney will tell them.
He let them know. He let those dudes know he was Big Ten Player.
Greg, not as much, but Scooney will let him know. He doesn't mind telling them.
Right.
I loved how Greg grew up because, again, I covered Greg. It's funny. So here's a story going back. I never, ever introduced myself to when I was a recruiting writer back when Rob was young. Now he's really old. I never, ever introduced myself to a head coach until Thad. That was the first coach I ever introduced myself to. It was at the tournament in Arkansas, and he was recruiting Oden and Conley at that point. And I remember going up to him, and I spent a bunch of time around, obviously, that team. They were so good. And eventually I understood, I'm not even going to bother going up to Greg. He has no interest in talking to me. Zero. He didn't want, and it wasn't like he wasn't arrogant or anything. He just didn't want to deal with the media. Mike Conley was great at it, so you'd always talk to Mike and his dad. Both Mike and Mike Sr. were awesome with the media. But, a few years ago, I did a big story for ESPN on Greg for Outside the Lines, and it was just awesome to see how much he's grown up, how comfortable he is with himself, and how social. He's not the most social dude in the world, but like he's great now. Like he's really, yeah, he's grown up. He's grown up.
He's great. He's great. I get a happy Father's Day text from him every Father's Day. He was great to have around.
Yeah.
And I hope that eventually an NBA organization hires him in a role that they feel like, because it would be helpful, because I think he'd be an incredible asset. I really do. He's continues to grow and mature. He's got a beautiful family. They came on a lot of trips with us. So yeah, he's great. Mark Titus has some great Odin stories, as you know.
Hey, their AAU team was awesome. The Speed City Heat with Odin Conley, McRoberts, Eric Gordon, Daquan Cook, Aaron Pogue, like those dudes they were killing everybody. It was, I mean, but there was also like legit crowds to see them play. I remember seeing them at Spiece my sophomore year, and they were all playing, and it was like like going to a high school game. Like there was a lot of people at the game to watch.
Yeah, that was an elite run in an elite group and a ton of fun. And even Greg coming to Ohio State, they had to change some things in terms of dorm security and everything because he's a rock star. He was a rock star coming.
Yeah. EJ has been unbelievable this year. You and I talked about him in the preseason, and I know you loved him and love him, but I don't even know if you thought he would be as good as he's been, especially over the last month or so. What has he done to be able to play at this level? I think he's an all first team Big Ten guy. And I tweeted that the other day. Like, I know maybe, I mean, the first team's loaded, so it's going to be hard for anybody to get on that team. But with the way you guys have won and the way he's played, I don't know how you can keep him off.
You know, a lot of that will depend on how we finish, obviously, Jeff, as you know. I'm in agreement. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's had a phenomenal year. Again, depending on how we finish, we have a brutal schedule ahead of us here with a lot of tremendous teams. Every team we play is either a tournament team or right there. So we'll see. But he's, you know what, as I've said this, I just love this team. And EJ is a big part of it because, you know, he represents a lot of what I love about this team. They're a group that's, you know, just tremendous people.
They're your type of guys. They're your type of guys, aren't they? They're hard hat. They're going to play hard. You know what you're going to get out of them, don't you?
Well, and he's really talented too, as you know. Yep. He's a versatile young man. And he's one of those guys where, you know, you got to figure out, are you going to try to fit him in because he's 6'6"? Are you going to try to fit him into a certain box? Or are you just going to try to let him play to his strengths and then figure out if there's some areas where we've got to support him? And that's what we did after about the first month of practice. We said, hey, listen, we got to let EJ kind of be EJ in terms of how we want to play him. And yeah, it's a team full of guys that I just love. It's not to say that we don't have ups and downs like every team, but I love this group. We've got a really close group, and EJ's, I think, talent and ability, and he had a phenomenal summer, but his talent and ability and his work this past summer has really shown.
Coach, I know you said earlier in the year that Dwayne may send you to an early grave, and certainly he's become a good Big Ten player.
Yes.
I guess, how has your relationship with him kind of evolved in his time at Ohio State?
You know, I think, as I said, you know, before that, I love him. I love him as a kid. I love him as a player. I love the joy that he brings to the game. I love the fact that winning's important to Dwayne, as it is to all of our guys, but it's important to him. You know, I think anytime you have a high volume score, I think there is a fine line between coaching him and not over coaching him. And Matt, your old coach, did a phenomenal job of that with Carson. I just think that's the balance you're always trying to figure out. And that's why relationship has to be really important. Dwayne wants to get better. He wants to improve. He really has. And I think that's what I feel good about when I reflect on our team this year, is guys have really gotten better in our program, and it's credit to them and their work. And You look at Kyle Young and Twain and Justin and, we talked about EJ, and those guys have really continued to improve and grow. And Dwayne's been great. Now, listen, he tells me before every game he loves me. I tell him back I love him. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some really hard conversations in between those 40 minutes. Like real hard.
As long as before and after you still love each other,
that's right.
That's all that matters, right?
That's right. That's right. So real hard conversations. But when we recruited him, a number of people who love him and care about Twain said, "Hey, listen, that's how you're going to have to coach him." And that's, we just tried to be really honest. But I love the kid.
Coach, you guys are knocking on the door of the top 5, and Lunardi's got you a 1 seed right now, and certainly a month left of basketball. But when you hear that, what is your first thought?
Honestly, Robbie, and every coach will say this, it's hard to say you don't know it because, you're a college basketball coach and it's everywhere this time of year, right? So I think every coach who says, I don't pay attention to that, you try not to pay attention to it, but you hear it. I would just say that I don't think anybody obviously would have expected that of this group sitting in early February. But I think our story's still being written. I don't know what this next 5 weeks is going to look like. Every team in our league, almost everybody, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, has had a real slide of, losing 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 or, because of how good the league is. So honestly, Robbie, we talk all the time and we say it and they hear me say it, focus on the bricks and not the wall. The wall is what the potential of your team and what that can be at the end of the year and tournament time and advancing and all. The bricks are what's most important. And we're trying to focus every day on small ways we can improve. And that's all I know to do at this point. The rest of it, we'll see what happens.
So you grew up 20 minutes south of Lexington, Nicholasville? Yes?
Yeah, Nicholasville. Or Nicholasville, as you said, but Nicholasville.
Nicholasville. All right. I'll try to get it right.
Respect his hometown, Jeff. Come on.
I know. Well, listen, it's like
put some respect on Nicholasville. That's the hometown of John Michael Montgomery. If you ever remember, country singer there.
I'm not a country music guy. I'm not gonna lie to you, Chris. I'm not a big country music guy. My wife and daughter like country a little bit, so I've gotten a little bit more into it. But all right, so growing up in Nicholasville, were you did I screw it up again? Rob's laughing at me. I think horrible.
It was good. That's good enough.
All right. See, Rob, don't laugh. I got it right. Anyway, did you have diehard Kentucky fan? I know your parents, I think, were big Kentucky fans. Did you have Rex Chapman posters on your wall in the 80s?
The whole deal. Yeah, the whole deal. Well, Rex was a little later than that, I think, but the whole deal. Rex Chapman, way back to Kyle Macy, but the whole. I mean, absolutely. Still to this day, I have those, the season posters with the schedule and games and the team on the wall. I have those. I'm in my 40s, let's say, and I have those on my wall in my old room back home from dating back, 15, 20 years. My mom and dad love Kentucky. They love the Wildcats. My mom is an avid follower.
Are they tweeting it? Hey, Chris, are they the crazy Kentucky fans that are tweeting at me all the time?
Yeah. Yes, they are probably. Yeah. They don't know what Twitter is, but they would, if they had Twitter, be tweeting at you. Yes. Yes. They don't like some of your takes on Kentucky basketball.
I'm sure they don't. I'm sure they don't right now, but they probably don't like watching Kentucky basketball right now either. So,
they're diehard supporters. They love it. They love their Cats. They love Cal. So yeah, it's my mom will still to this day, if we're playing, she'll watch us. Yeah. If we're playing at the same time, she'll watch us and then listen to the Cats.
Really?
On the radio.
Wow.
So what if you ever played? What if you guys did play Kentucky last year?
Yeah, they came.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they came and
Who they root for?
no, my dad was really happy. My mom had some mixed feelings after the game when we won, but my dad was happy, but my mom was honestly a little cold. I'll be honest. She was a little cold after the win. She was a little cold.
That's amazing. Coach, I got to ask you this because Jeff hated on him earlier. Were you a fan of Roger Harden by chance at Kentucky?
Yeah. I mean,
See? All right, Jeff, you hater. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going. But he didn't think you'd even know who that was.
Yes. All those guys, man. All those guys I followed. I don't remember how old he was relative to how old I was, but yeah, all those dudes, man. Those were fun teams.
He was Mr. Basketball at my high school in the 80s. That's why I asked you that. He played about high school.
Who was your favorite Kentucky player? Your favorite Kentucky player of all time was who?
I probably growing up, it was Kyle Macy, but Rex Chapman as I got older, man. It's hard not to, if you're a Kentucky kid, love Rex and the way he played.
Do you have a relationship now with Rex at all?
You know what? I've met Rex a little bit, and I love what he's done here, and he's got these videos that he puts out. I'm a dog lover.
Yeah.
He's got these videos that he puts out on dogs that I love, but I've got a lot of respect for. I love watching him as a pro, and got a lot of respect for how my man has completely turned his life around. I love that about him. So
me too.
Coach, when you look at the Big Ten, who's the one team that scares you the most? I know it's a tough question to answer because there's so many good ones, but
I've not had a chance to watch Michigan much, but they're obviously elite. When you look at their numbers, Robbie, offensively and defensively.
Yep.
I think we have a number of teams, whether it's Illinois, who can, I think they're really, really good. And I think we've got a number of teams that can make a Final Four run. Wisconsin's got great veteran leadership. Iowa, we played, I think, is one of the best offensive teams we've ever played. I mentioned Illinois. And then you have a lot of teams in this league that we play that I really believe if they get to the tournament or when they get to the tournament, can win a game or get to a second weekend, then I could rattle off 4 or 5 schools that I really believe could do that. So, will this be the year we win a national championship? I think we've got some certain possibilities for sure. Who knows? But I think we've got a number of teams again that can advance.
I think it's interesting when we talked about Penn State because I had you guys for that game, and they might not have an NCAA tournament resume at the end of the year, but I think they're an NCAA tournament level team. Like they're terrifying to play against.
Absolutely. You could say that about them. Maryland. I think Indiana's clearly in, but I think you could, there's a number of teams that I think are on the brink, and if they get in, you wouldn't want to play them, say, if you were a 6 seed.
Right.
You just wouldn't want to do it.
They'd be afraid of nobody because they've seen the league totally.
I will tell you this, guys, and I've said this. Our first year, everybody says, well, you were 15-3 in our first year. The league wasn't very good our first year. We had 4 teams in the NCAA tournament that first year. I came in, I was like, man, this is great. Like, you know what? Like this next year, it was like, whoa, this league's getting really good. 8 teams in the tournament.
Yeah.
But we were 8-12, and we got in because we had some great non-conference wins. But when we got to the tournament, to your point, Robbie, and we played a really good Iowa State team who had just won the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, they were loaded too, like Taylor Horton Tucker and Halliburton and all those dudes.
Loaded. We did feel like, okay, like if we play well, we got a chance because of what we just went through in a 20-game schedule. We really did. And we're fortunate to beat a really good, well-coached Iowa State team.
Hey, Rob, my daughter, the first person she ever interviewed was Chris Holtmann. How about that? In her illustrious career. And now the crazy thing, so we go out there last year, and I really miss it this year, Chris, because this was going to be the year. She's a junior in high school, and I was going to build my schedule around where she wants to go to school and literally just take her wherever I could. And it's hard because she didn't love sports for the first 15 years of her life. And all of a sudden something flipped and she loves it now. So now we go out last year to Ohio State, and Chris not only does the interview with Talia, but also they take us on a tour around the campus the morning of the game. An hour and a half. Kyle was unbelievable in taking us around. So now she's fallen in love with Ohio State, and her grades are pretty good, Chris. I hope she can get into Ohio State. You know, they're definitely number one right now, but, you know, and I'm trying to persuade her. Like, she's talking like Syracuse and BU. They're like 75 or 80 grand a year. And Ohio State, out of state, is only like, I looked, you know, it's like 45. I'm like, come on, Ohio State. It's great. You've got everything there. You've got a hockey team. You got Ohio State, you know, and she loved it because we drive in on Friday night, Rob. We drive into Cincy and drove from Cincy, flew into Cincy, drove, and we get in about like 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock. And as we're driving to our hotel, I'm like, let's just drive by the campus, just see what's going on. And she sees everybody walking from all the frat and sorority houses to the bars. And you just see her eyes got so big. She's like, yeah, this is where I want to go to school.
Yeah.
So if she does go there, Chris, I'm putting it on you to make sure she doesn't get in any trouble in Columbus.
We'll keep a good eye on her. We will keep a good eye on her.
I want to say, I do think it's really cool, Coach, that of all the Ohio State guys I know, I played with William Buford over in Spain. I've known Evans since college and the USA basketball stuff. I think it's really cool that all of the former Ohio State guys live in Columbus.
Yeah.
There's not many teams that can say that. And I think it's really cool that you guys can.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you, Robbie. It's a phenomenal fraternity.
Yes.
And it really is. And it's not just Thad's players, but obviously Thad's players, especially during those kind of glory years, are really close.
Sure.
And it's
it shows in the TBT. They all love playing together.
You can tell. You can to Evan and Jared and Aaron and John, and they all of them, Buford, they have a Lighty, and they're phenomenal people too.
Yep.
They're phenomenal people. So it's really cool, the connection they have, the fraternity they have. And, you know, Mike Conley lives, Mike Red, those guys have all been great. And dating, you know, Clark Kellogg is also, you know, we have a former players dinner at the start of every year. Thad originated it, and it's a great time, man.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's very cool.
Well, listen, we appreciate you taking some time. We know you're pretty busy here, and the good thing is you probably shouldn't have to see a Purdue Boilermaker for the rest of at least the regular season. We know you won't have to see one, especially Hummel. Like, you're done with Hummel.
No, he might see. Well, I guess I don't think I'll be on site, but he might have to at least get on a Zoom with me a couple more times because I think I've got Ohio State. So.
Yeah, it's a reminder every time I see Robbie of 0-2. And Jeff, I appreciate your text about Painter giving me a 0-2 record here. I appreciate you digging at me a little bit on that. But no, it's great being with you guys, man. Enjoyed it, and enjoy when I get a chance listening to you guys' stuff. I really do. I appreciate what you guys do for our game. I really do.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. And Rob won't need to get in a Zoom again with you because he's got now the story that he could tell on the air, you know, about the hair transplant. So he's good. He's got enough ammo now. That
I thought that was just going to stay between us.
Yeah, that's right. It is. We won't tell anybody else.
I'm not an offensive journalist, so I'm not gonna. I don't need that shit that Goodman does to throw stones.
That, Robbie. I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.